Today's amazing guest is Murat Mutlu, who is the co-founder and CEO of the design platform Marvel and the research platform Ballpark. Murat, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me. Really excited to chat to you today.
Man, you have no idea. So, here's the crazy thing. I do a lot of intermittent fasting. So yesterday, I told myself that okay, I'm going to start this fast, and I knew I had the interview with you. So literally, I told myself that if I can make it all the way till our interview ends, then I can have this chocolate right here.
Oh wow, there you
So
go. Well, hopefully it's going to be worth the wait for putting yourself through that. So I better make it good. So let's get into it.
no, absolutely. I just for me, I just realized that a lot of these things are about training the mind, about doing hard things, and then sometimes it's easier to do it the body. So like when I tell myself that for 20 hours to 24 hours, you're not going to eat any food, and the body goes through that tough time, it kind of like also tells your mind that hey, you can do this.
Yeah. I guess the same method that actors take, right? It's like they put themselves in situations where their body's doing a certain thing, so that the way they're able to produce a scene or like the acting through that. So yeah, I get it. It's it's not something I would do. It sounds hellish. Like I can barely go half hour without food. So well done for that.
Yeah. So I'm gonna like take the whole like time and rewind it back a lot, and trying to go to the
Yeah.
point where Murat was a senior designer, or just a designer.
Okay.
Working at a company, working in an
Yep.
agency. Talk to me about that phase.
So I had been working as kind of a creative slash designer for a little while in various agencies and startups, and I think I got to the point where you just take on more responsibility, or you want more responsibility, and because of that, I started to sort of move up through different roles in different companies to the point I was a senior designer. And I was back then. I think I was probably in an agency. That's where I spent a lot of my time in my kind of early career, and that you're kind of responsible for kind of pitches or leading certain projects, and so on. And design was very different back then as well. It wasn't the way it is today. So
What was it like?
I think it was a lot more unstructured. It just felt like the tools didn't give you the structure, and you had to kind of do it yourself. But things are all over the place, and like it just styles were not what they are today. Sort of taste was different. Platforms were different. iOS was different. Web had capabilities that weren't as good as today. So it was just a different time, and there was probably a lot less to do. There wasn't various screen sizes. It was just like one and done kind of experience. You cut assets yourself, you exported stuff out, and
What tools were you
all
using?
that kind of Photoshop mainly. I mean, back then there was only Photoshop. Sketch wasn't on the scene yet. That was my early career. And looking back now, I wasn't actually very good at it. I just realized, like, looking back at, like, so every now and then you open a folder with your old work in, and it was really shit. Like I wasn't particularly good. Like I was, I think I was finding my feet, but I managed to somehow get to a senior position while still trying to find where I was. But design at that time, I think, was quite forgiving. Like you could get quite far because there just wasn't a lot of people in it. Like you just get quite far because you had some experience in working across iOS or whatever. And I managed to get to a senior position. So I think through that, I was really determined to get better at design, and I really loved following people with certain styles or certain products they built, and I was just like, I want to be as good as that. And so I basically just practice, and then eventually got a bit better. That kind of experience of being in an agency, I think it didn't really make me a better designer, but I think what it did do is just teach me more about having to pitch my own work, which you do pretty much every week or two there. So you have to justify why you did certain things. You have to take people on a journey with you. That kind of storytelling is really, really important now for me. I think
You got better.
if there was anything I'd take away from that, basically, just selling, isn't it? Like you're essentially you're learning how to be a salesperson for your own work, which I think I didn't realize at the time, I'm probably sure a lot of people don't, as they get into sort of becoming starting their own thing and being a co-founder or whatever, that majority of it is selling, like selling to hire, selling to sell your products, selling to convince investors, like all that stuff it's kind of the same thing. And you got to try and get people excited about what you're doing. And a lot of those things came from that experience in working agencies where I'm just like stood up, in boardrooms or wherever, just constantly trying to justify why I put together some mock-ups or whatever. So, it was a good experience.
So you're doing all this stuff. You're a designer. You're learning the process of selling. You're getting better at design, and then
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand, like, what made you decide that, hey, you know what? I think I'm gonna like start tinkering on side projects, like just like build side projects and like have something outside of the agency life.
Yeah, I think like it was because it felt like tech went from kind of having changes every couple of years to just like new things coming out every month. And it was in the kind of era where everyone was reading TechCrunch and things were getting funded and launching, and it just felt like there was a new product every other day that was doing something new. And the App Store came out, and it's just like these real big leaps in product. And previously, it was just you had a few like major websites around and things that you use, but there wasn't that kind of range of what you have now. So as these things started to come out, naturally, like if you're a curious person, like you'd want to explore the tech that made these things or the APIs these things have released, and so on and so on. And I kept trying to do that through my role and just was unable to because of the business having other requirements and resource constraints and and all those things. So it was very hard at that time, especially when you're in agency, to find like-minded people because it's so project by project, and you're always trying to win new work, and there's never feels like anyone has the time or the willingness to pay for you to explore stuff because you're basically on the clock for some rate card somewhere. So that led to me wanting to do it myself, and finding people who I'd worked with who also felt that way, and then maybe just doing it outside of work. So that's kind of how it started. And I was fortunate enough to work with some really great people who are now, my co-founders at Marvel and Ballpark, where they had the same curiosity, the same drive to make stuff. We just had different talents. They were great at engineering and I was okay at design. And that led to this amazing combination where you just sit down, you come in at lunchtime, just sitting there on table or in between sort of work and calls and emails, you're just talking about new stuff that's coming out and you're sharing links and go, look at this thing, this is sick. Like, imagine if we could play around with this. And then just leads into, let's just do this, let's just try something and build a little thing where we mess around with some new API or SDK or something like that, which is how we actually did start this. Like we played around with something really simple, which was just experimenting with the accelerometer in iOS, which at that time was new. And that was how me and Brendan, my co-founder, CTO, I think it was our first kind of side project together. And it was very quick, and a weekend we got it done, and barely anyone used it and looked at it. But it was still a very like good moment to see that actually you don't need this big machine of your employer behind you. You can just go and do the shit yourself. And that was enough to go, I'm hooked now, right? Like it's like you just had this like shot of truth juice or something and just, oh shit, this is actually what we're capable of. This is what we can do. And then the next project after that was a bit bigger, which was more of a product. It was an iOS app. And then the project after that became Marvel.
Oh, wow.
So, there was a couple of steps, and they weren't like months apart. They were years apart, but the same people who I worked on those with became my co-founders, and we ended up starting a company together.
Oh, wow. So you built that trust with them. So through all these side projects, right? You're working with the same set of crew, same set of people. Yeah. You're building that trust. You're understanding how each other works. So eventually when Marvel came around, all of you already had that trust that, hey, yes, we can become co-founders.
100%. So, you get to know these, you get to know them get to know them as friends, and we were friends anyway, but you get to also know a bit about what they want from life, what they expect to do in work, like what makes them excited, right? And you end up I think like the trust that you have and the trust in their abilities, the trust in their commitment, all comes from that experience of getting to know them. You know, we went away as well, like we went travel together and all that stuff. So you know, you're basically, I know the whole cliche is like, you know, getting a co-founder or co-founders is like being in a marriage and so on. And it's true, because if you're starting a company with someone, unless, you know, you decide to shut it down in the first year, you're going to probably be together on that for years to make it work, right? Because, you know, year one, you're still trying to find out what you're trying to do. Year two, even if you are successful, it's starting to grow a bit. And then year three, you're on, you know, you're off to the races. That's a long time to spend with someone every day, you know, and you're in the office or wherever with them for a large portion of the day. So how would you be able to do a commitment like that without really knowing them?
But then do you have to be like best friends with them? So for example, like I work with a lot of people at work. I mean, they're good work friends, I would say, like acquaintances or colleagues, I would say, but they're not necessarily my best friends that I just, talk about the recent Liverpool game or Arsenal game. So when it comes to co-founders, like, do you think that you have to be the best buds or best friends, or can you just have a good working relationship and that's that?
I mean, I think you could do both. Like, I don't think, I'm sure there are plenty of successful, really successful startups, which are just like, let's just keep this business, you know, and have that relationship. And there are others which, you know, are probably more of a much closer bond or you know, friendship and stuff. I don't know. I think it certainly makes it easy. Well, I feel like it makes it easier knowing the co-founders the way I do and having that relationship with them. But I'm also sure that, you know, there are certain people and certain types who maybe it's like their third or fourth, you know, business or startup, and you know, then maybe at that point it's less important because you're just like, look, I just want this person who I'm going to sort of headhunt from this place and start a business. So I'm sure that's possible. I just think when you're starting up and you're a first time founder, you know, it's a real ride. Like there's a whole host of stuff that will come your way, and your life will start to morph and sort of change based on these experiences, and depending on your age as well. Like you know, if you're on the younger side, I think that having someone relatively same age who's going through the same experience allowed you to enjoy it more, if that makes sense. Like, I think there are things that you do that, and when you're at that point, that are just much more enjoyable together. But you know, everyone's different. That was my experience anyway. I just felt like, you know, we're pretty much the same age, so we're all the same age. So we basically like felt like, you know, you're just on this life journey together, where all of the things that you're doing are shared equally. Like you're either going on company holidays together, you're going on, you know, trips or festival, all those sorts of things. I felt we were able to experience all that together.
But then would you have, if I were to ask you, like, do you have friends outside of the co-founders that you hang out with also? They're also, maybe you're even more closer to them, but they're not your co-founders, you know, just.
As in people from the company?
Just outside friends, like not your co-founders. So you said your co-founders are.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. I've got my friends from when I was, you know, at school, to my friends from university, to all of that, which I see, you know, as frequently as I can. One of my best friends lives around the corner. So, you know, that, like, of course, like I think you would have that as well. So again, it's like everyone's situation is different. I just think, like, would I do some of the things that we did when we started Marvel now? No, because I've got 2 kids, and you know, it would be really stressful to do those things now. I'd rather sleep than do some of the things we did back then. But no, now, you know, my views on the world are different, as are my co-founders.
So I guess what I was trying to get to is, you have your friend around the corner that you're really close with, you hang out with, and maybe you called your friend around the block your best friend. So is the intention that your co-founder gets to the same level, like as a best friend as your friend around the block, or it doesn't have to be that level?
I mean, like, I think it's different. Like I said, it's different for everyone. I think, you know, it's, I spend much more time with my co-founders than I do with my friends. Yeah. So I see them all the time. I think the thing is, that shouldn't be your expectation. Like, I guess maybe this is how I describe it. I would easily I'd be happy to spend a week on holiday with even my co-founders, and I'd have a great time. You know, like I think I'm able to spend personal time with them and business time, and I enjoy both. Like they're super talented, plus they're really funny, and I get on with them really well. And I would just say, like, probably, you know, you're spending 8 hours or more a day with these people. What kind of experience do you want to have in those 8 hours, right? Like, yes, you could get on with someone business level, and I'm sure that that's completely fine, especially if you're smashing it. Like, it doesn't really matter how you get on. But I think I want to enjoy those 8 hours, and I want to be around people that I like. So that's the choice I made. And I think, yeah, it would be a shame to not have that for the amount of time spend on something and just be like, yeah, let's just get this meeting over and done with so I can get back to work, you know, and not really want to find out more about who I'm working with. So, but again, everyone's different. I know people who have started stuff with co-founders that they've found randomly at an event or whatever, and, you know, they're not the best friends in the world, but the co-founder's super talented and they make things work, and it's a successful company. So it doesn't really matter. It just depends on the person and where you are in your life and what you want. And I know people who are just like, I've got kids, I need to go home, I don't really care, you know, and that's what I want to do. And other people who want, like, I want this kind of style of working. So completely, there's a flavor for everyone. It just depends on what you like. So I would just say, for me personally, I like people who I get on with. Really, I mean, it sounds, of course, who doesn't? But I like people who I can spend time with outside of work and enjoy all of it. Like, enjoy their company and not even be work related. Go out, you know, whatever, holiday, drink, dinner, and you'll have a great time. So that's my preference.
Love it. This is like, these are all the questions, like, you know, like you're like 10 steps ahead of me. So me bombarding with all these questions is like answering so many questions in my own head.
Yeah, it's all good. And I think it depends on what you're doing. If you're trying to find a co-founder for the first thing you're doing, I think that, you know, there's a lot of trust in the first thing you do, because, you know, you don't want to get burnt by someone leaving halfway. You're going to give, like, if you're two of you, you know, 50-50 each, and then they're not committed, and then all of a sudden, like, you're left with something that's half finished and you can't find anyone else, or maybe you get a bit of funding and then they leave. All those scenarios, like, that are things that happen a lot. And I think that the stat is that the large majority of startups fail, not because of money, but because of the co-founders, like, falling out, right?
Yeah.
So that's something to be aware of. And I've heard stories where people have started stuff and the other person's just walked, and, you know, like, even post funding, and it's really problematic. So to avoid all those things, you just want to make sure that you know that person and what they want, what motivates them. And as long as, I'd say the one thing is, like, as long as someone's putting in the same amount of effort as you can't really argue with it. Like, I think that's fine. Like, whether they're your friend or best friend, or they're you know, just a working relationship, as long as the effort levels are the same, then you haven't really got much to worry
It's like,
about.
with me, I've found amazing people that I worked and collaborated with, but like the things that I do outside of work where I unplug, like I might watch a soccer game, you know, like I might do other things. And then the people that I work with in a business capacity or work capacity, they might be wanting to just talk about work, or they might be different outside of the work setting. So the reason I was asking all these questions is because I get along with them amazingly. When we're working together, there's a level of trust. But then outside of work, we are different people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, which is fine. I think, like, I wouldn't get too hung up on that, especially if the working relationship is
like, there are other best friends I would rather go on a trip with. Like, you know, we're talking about, like, you don't mind, like, traveling with them.
of
Like,
course. Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's where I was trying to get at.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, you know, when you get a co-founder, the aim isn't to replace your best friend or to have a new best friend. It's basically to build something special with someone, you know, and have a commitment from them to be on the same par, like the same level as you in terms of commitment, energy, you know, shared values, what you want to build, mission, all that stuff. I think those are the things that make the business work. The other things are what make maybe some of the more enjoyable parts better. But, you know, like you said, like, if as long as they're nice people, like, you don't really have to, you haven't really got anything to worry about, right? Like, yeah, someone might like cricket, someone might like rugby. It won't make a difference. Like, there's plenty of we are like my co-founders. We don't like the same. We don't like the same stuff. I mean, not all the same stuff. It's actually quite funny how different we are, because it's just really amusing when we choose things to do, or I go to things they like to do. So, for example, one of my co-founders likes dive bars, and I don't like dive bars, and I hate going into them. So, but I go into them anyway because I'm like, whatever. It's like, just want to hang out, and just it's the conversation still the same, if the setting's different. So yeah, that's a very lightweight example. But I mean, yeah, I think that's if the other parts are ticking the boxes, I wouldn't worry too much about. Really worry too much about those bits you mentioned.
I'm very new to this, of course, compared to you. But what I try to like focus on is like, can I trust this person? Like trust is big thing, like morally, or like, can I trust this person to like not do shady stuff? And like for me, or like finances, can we like, can I trust them? And if that checks the box, I feel like for me, a lot of other things like fall into place. Because like if I can't trust this person financially to like be good on their word, or like just morally like not do shady stuff, then it's very hard for me to fathom working with them.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, if you've got concerns about someone financially, I would say, yeah, I would stop that relationship straight away. I think it would be, if they don't pass that test, the other ones are going to be very difficult.
Murat's like, oh my god, this is like elementary level questions at your level, but I mean, I'm still thinking.
Well, I'm kind of thinking. I'm thinking, who are you talking to? Like, what kind of people are you meeting? Bigger that you're not be able to trust them financially. But I mean, that there are some fundamentals here, like values, are important. Like you want to make there are all sorts of behaviors in people that you would just be like, that's a red flag. I don't want that. And
it's true.
That's important too.
It's just like, it's like not like I'm always talking to people that are like that, but it's just like when I think about my own process, like yours, like I would say like that's where I start off with like, I don't know this person. We've just met, maybe through the podcast, something like that. So can we connect on this level first? And then all these other ones are like slowly we progress there.
Yeah, of course. Like it'll take time. I mean, if you don't have the I was really fortunate to have gotten to know my co-founders through working with them for a long time. So that's not something that everyone gets. Then it's like, how do you get to that point without those years and years of working together to understand if this person is someone you want to spend the next potentially 5 even more years with on a business, and what are the things that you need to get right in your mind to make that happen, and likewise the other person too, right? It's a two-way street. You'll both be sharing the percentages of the company equally, most likely. So that's the thing you got to go through on your checklist to make sure they're the right fit. And there I can't remember any off the top of my head, but I mean, there are plenty of examples where people have met in unusual circumstances, or in ways where it wasn't just like they weren't particularly looking for it, but and then they built these amazing companies. And what was that one about Uber? It was like I think Travis and some other dude was out. So they were outside waiting for a cab in the rain, and they were like, "Oh, this sucks." They both talked to each other. This is rubbish. And then next thing you know, they were like, "Well, we should solve this." And then all of a sudden, company happens because they were both waiting for a cab together in the rain. So there's loads of examples. But I mean, it's just about, is that person someone you want to spend that time with, and are you going to get to where you need to together?
So at what point did you realize that your co-founders, like you and your co-founders have worked on a couple of projects before Marvel, and then Marvel happens? At what point did you all realize like, hey, let's all quit all the agency work, the day job that we were doing, and then go all in on just Marvel?
So it was a little bit, I think it was when we'd been talking about it for a while, and it started to seem like, just based on the numbers, that something was happening and there was an opportunity to like do it properly. And we'd been building on it evenings and weekends, doing the whole kind of side project thing. And once we released it and we saw that people were using it, and actually it wasn't slowing down, like more and more people were hearing about it and signing up. And it was really interesting. And some of the names signing up were like companies we loved. We're like, right, okay, this is probably worth some more time. And I was really fortunate that I had previously done some freelance work for a company in the UK, which is called Kiddie Care, which is basically a department store, online store for kids stuff like clothes, toys, whatever. And when I decided to try and raise money for Marvel, I reached out to my network and I was just like, does anyone know any investors? And it just so happened that the CEO of that company had decided to become an angel and start a fund called Hatch. And we were their first investment. So I just reached out to him. I was like, look, I'm starting my own thing. We'd already had a couple of meetings when I was freelancing in there. I think you could see I was hopefully good at what I did. And then, it made it a lot easier. So I think network is everything actually. Like more 100% today is basically, one thing I really regret is that I didn't spend enough time doing that before starting. Like I just had my agency world, networking, asking people to go for coffee, like getting people to look at whatever I was put together, whether it's a blog post, whether it's like work, and just like expanding out beyond the agency world that I was in, because everything gets so much easier when you do start building that network. It's like, and I think that without it, it's much harder, and it was really hard at the beginning because once we got things rolling, getting seed investment was really challenging, and it was just a lot of there weren't a lot of funds at the time. It was a very different time back then, and got rejected a lot, and was running out of people to talk to. And fortunately, someone who I knew, I'd met previously, who was a CEO of a company, did an intro, and I just got investment like 2 weeks later. So, it is about building that network out and letting people know who you are, what you're working on, what you're passionate about. And when things come up, you'll be front of mind. Like people don't know about things they don't know about. So how do you make sure that they know who you are and what you're up to?
So what I'm hearing is what I'm doing right now via the podcast, putting myself in front of people like you. If I were to do something in the future, should that opportunity and moment come, then it's much easier for me to reach out to you and say that, hey, I'm doing this or doing that, versus just randomly reaching out to you the first time.
100%. So if you, exactly. So like, let's say we hadn't met and you were reaching out to me. Of all the cold emails that I get every day, right? Like how would that one be one that stood out? And it'd be very difficult because there's so much stuff that's happening every day. Like, there's so many things that are taking our attention, and like whether it's Slack or email and Twitter and whatever else, and life outside of the screen. So having this conversation now means that at some point in the future, I may be able to be helpful for you. I don't know how. Like, hopefully I can be, but it'll be much easier for you through this conversation for whatever I know, whatever network I built up to tap into that, right? So that's kind of how you do it. Now, that's not to say everyone who wants it will get it, because you're asking for something, right? And to do things like that, you have to kind of demonstrate certain things. Like, hopefully you're a nice person. Hopefully the thing that you're talking about is interesting and passionate. So if you came to me with something like, I'm thinking of starting, I'm thinking about starting, let's say, what's the best way to describe it? An estate agent or something like that, which is like a realtor, right? I'll be like, all right, I don't know anything about that. I can't help you, right? So the things have to be relevant to what my space is, which is typically like creativity, productivity, SaaS. But if you said, okay, I'm looking at getting into building a recruitment service, I'll be like, look, I don't really know that many people that could help with that, or investors or anything like that. So hopefully the people that you're picking to ask are the main experts of some sort, right? And I've had people reach out and ask for certain things, and I'm like, I honestly have no idea how I can help you. Like, I don't know anyone in this space or whatever. And it could be lots of things at the moment. Like just being in this position, I do get a lot of inbound, and I love to help where I can, but sometimes I just don't have any ability to do it. So yeah, depending on that, but generally speaking, it's a really good idea to do things like this, and or whatever else. And it can literally just be DMing someone on Twitter and going, listen, like, I read this post you did or this tweet, I really agree. Here's like a couple of thoughts on why I agree. If there's any chance we can chat about it in the future, I'd love to like jump on Zoom or whatever. And even just that, and replying to tweets, replying to posts on blog posts in the comment section, like emailing, all those things are possible. It just depends like how you do it and when you do it. But hopefully I like to think that most people like to pay it forward. I wouldn't be here if someone didn't give me the time and helped out. So where I can do it, I do try. And hopefully that's helped some.
It's helping me, and it's going to help a lot of other people. And once again, thank you for just like doing this, paying it
I hope
forward
so.
right now.
That's all right.
So like
It's all good.
now you've started Marvel, you've got the funding in, right? You've got amazing investors like Mills, and
Mm-hmm.
you're all in on this. So
Yeah.
you decide to be the
Yeah.
CEO, right? And before this, you were the senior designer. So you were like in an individual contributor capacity, leading projects, and now you're the CEO. So I'm kind of curious to
Yeah.
know, how does that leveling up look like? Because both are very different roles.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically learn as you go, right? Like you get advice along the way. Your investors are telling you stuff, and you're reading. But then it's the real world situations that help you understand like what really this all means. And it's like at the beginning, it was really hard to understand what exactly it was. Like, you go out and get some investment. You're like, wow, okay, this is my job now. I go raise funds and do this, and then you start to take on more responsibility because, okay, there's no one to do customer support, there's no one to do marketing, sales, design. And then eventually, if you're fortunate enough to be able to hire into those roles, and then you build out that team, and then your role changes again because you don't have that stuff to do anymore. Then, okay, what do I do now? Like, I used to do payroll, but now I need to do something else because I've got someone to do that. And then you start realizing what you're responsible for is essentially like the health and well-being of the company. Like, it's vision, it's health, and setting direction and a course for everyone to jump on with, and then of course hiring and all those other things. So then that is also a part of it, and it changes over time, and you have to keep like forgetting what you've learned and relearning. And if you've got bad habits, they could get even worse once you're CEO. Like, I don't know, like timekeeping or responding to emails, or like if you're just not good at those things, like you just get worse at them. Like, it'll just amplify things that you're not good at. And so one thing, I mean, I don't know how other people who have been through this feel about it, but I've got some great people around me in my team, and they're really, like, a lot of them know me really well. There's probably in some ways better than I know myself. And often, like, what I'd had done in the past was try to be good at the things I wasn't good at, because I thought that I had to have this kind of, these number of skills under my belt, because I had to be a certain type of way. But what they've kind of taught me, exactly. It's like, oh, you've got a gap here and you've got to do that. But actually, what you really probably should be doing is the things that you're really good at, do that more. And then, then bring in the other people to help the things that you're not good at. So fill the gaps with people who love doing that stuff or are really good at it. And once I started to figure that out, I'm like, actually, I embrace the bits I'm shit at. Like, you can't be good at everything. Like, not everyone's good at everything. You can't be a really great designer and a really great developer and like CEO. And like, there are a fair few people like that. And there are new things happening all the time. Like, marketing will change, product-led growth will come in, new sales methods, all sorts of things. You're just not going to be good at all of them. But what you may be good at is, like, in my case, like, if storytelling and strategy and product design and things like that are your strong points, speaking to customers, do all that stuff, then ramp that up. That's where you're good at. And if that's not to say you shouldn't know how to read your accounts, right, or something like that, or your some legal documentation. You should be able to read it, but you shouldn't be able to just put it together. Maybe that's not your strength to write a legal document or like an accounting like write up or whatever. The goal is to just use your strengths that got you here in the first place, try to tweak and build on them and refine them, and then hopefully get rid of the things that you're not good at to people who are really good at them, and then it'll serve you better. So that helped a lot, and I think that embracing that a bit more over the last couple of years has helped too. So yeah, I think that was how I would say that you can change in this, but you are forced to change a lot of the ways, because you just have different responsibilities. Soon as you start hiring, like, things change. So
this is so mind-blowing, because this is very counterintuitive, because like normally the normal advice is like, let's be all around, let's learn all these skills. And then very often I've found myself that, like, even with the podcast, like, for example, like, what I'm really good at is building relationships, connecting with people, cold networking and stuff. What I may not be that good at is, like, let's say, distribution, for example, like just like creating viral threads on Twitter and increasing massive follower count. Um, it's not to say I cannot do it, but it's just I enjoy this like this right now, like talking with you way more than figuring out like how can I get this post to like 1 million views. You see what I'm saying? So I've
Mm.
slowly become more aware
Yeah.
of those things, and hearing
Yeah.
you say that just gives me that assurance that okay, it's all right.
Yeah. And it's like, then the challenge is, how do I find someone that's really good at it and get them excited about why they should work for me, when they could work for anyone else? Right. So, um, another thing that happens during this process is the things that you're originally good at sometimes are things that are no longer good at because you've not been practicing them. So for design, for example, I am, I'm not a good designer anymore because I'm surrounded by people who are better designers than me and they do a much better job. So one of the things that I came into this with is what I could do that, but now it's like, there is no need for me to get involved in that, even though that's like, as part of my identity, right? It's like, I'm a designer, I want to design. But if I'm looking at my own work and going, this stuff's out there much better now, people around me are doing much better work, it's like, what's the point of me wasting people's time with trying to do stuff? So I think it's very easy to fall back into what you think you know, because there's comfort there, right? Like you're just like, right, I know how to open a design tool and put together some rectangles and make a UI, cool. And I could easily lose myself in a couple of hours in doing that, but there are people who do better stuff than me, so why bother? And yeah, and I think that's what will eventually happen to a lot of the skills you have. So then you just pick, the things that you've been doing, like the busy work, is no longer the stuff that people care about. It's the things that people care about is like how you manage the company, and that's eventually going to be the
So
goal.
what I'm trying to figure out is like, obviously there's no book that's written just for you. Like, okay, this is how you become a startup CEO. Sure, you can watch videos, you can read articles, but you're not the only person trying to figure that out. There's a lot of other startups where people in the same journey trying to figure that out. Some of them maybe in the same space, some of them may be competitors. So it's like every day you're trying to be better in this new role of a CEO. And what I wonder is like that fear
Mm-hmm.
that, okay, what if I cannot figure this thing out, like being better at this or being letting go of the bad habits? And what if that tanks the company? Not tanks the company, but like if I'm not able to scale up that quickly in my growth, maybe that will hinder the company growth. Like, how do you deal with that?
Um, I think the first thing is to identify it. If that's the case, right? Let's say your decision making is really poor, and you've you've not set the company on the right course. Hopefully, you have people around you, especially if you have investors. I'm sure they'll be the ones to tell you first. And then if you have honest co-founders, they'll be the ones to tell you even before that, I think. So, if you're unable to achieve something for the good of the company, then you have a couple of options. And one is to either fix that and get better quickly, depending on where you are in the business. Or the other one is to step down and let someone else do it. So if you think that someone more capable or someone is ready to take that on, and maybe you take a different role, and that's also a possibility. And so like that happens too. Like that happens in companies who are really far along and doing really well. The CEOs decide that maybe it's no longer for them, or the co-founders decide it's no longer for them, and they hire a CEO, and that's completely fine. And that's actually a similar thing to what I described to you earlier. It's like you hire people to fill in the gaps you're no longer like good at, and if it turns out that one of those gaps is that role that you're no longer fulfilling, because maybe, for example, when it does happen, you like the marketing side of it, maybe you like more the product development side, and those are the things that get you passionate, and you're fortunate enough at that point to bring in someone to replace the CEO side of it, and you can do that too. It depends. Like there's no one way of doing things in this. Like everything's able to be changed. It's just where you put the company first usually, and make sure you're doing what's best for the company and the team. And if you do feel like you're holding it back, then it's time to make a decision in some way. Maybe you could get a coach and they could coach you through it really quickly. Maybe make you have this kind of revelation, you make the change yourself, or you decide that someone else needs
This
to make
is
that
mind
change.
blowing to me because in one of our previous conversations, you had told me that There's all these things you thought were important, and when you became a CEO, you realize that they were no longer important. So as I'm talking to him, realizing that so many things that I think are important now, as I go further in my career and my journey, they may not be important anymore as much as I think now.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. I think there's a when you start out, especially if it's your first time, um, I think it's very easy to get caught up in the detail too much. And when it comes down to it, most companies survive because and they do well because they're making money. Like it's easy business stuff, right?
Yeah.
If I went to business school, I'm pretty sure that would be like lesson number one. But in this space, because of like VC investment and other things, like it can grow for all costs and burning cash and all that stuff. Like it can be hard to forget, it can be easy to forget that, and it can get away from you. But I think like the little the little drop shadow you put on a button, or like the interactions, or like even some new features, like don't really matter at the end of the day, like unless you're making sure that the business is doing okay in terms of sales and revenue and what other things like that. So I think there's a portion of that which I think if it's your first time, it can be easy to forget. I think we were fortunate in the early days that we had such little resources that it just felt like we were always really efficient in what we did, and we were like really scrappy, and we kind of never lost that. And that kind of mentality, I think, serves well. And I think there's a couple of companies out there which have always had that mentality, and even at their size now, like Zoom, for example. I think Zoom have always been profitable, so or something close to that. They were profitable when they IPO'd and all that stuff. So that mentality all the way throughout is like, no, this is how we run things, and that comes from whatever experience you've had in the past, or whatever kind of values you have. I think those sorts of things are interesting. But yeah, I think the things that matter at the end of the day is that if you're a business, you need to make money, and it just can be easy to forget that for a lot of people, not just who are starting up and founders, but also a lot of people in the space, like a lot of people who are looking in from the outside, and like all the comments on what you might see on Twitter and stuff, like it's all about money. Like, and it's not great to say, because maybe as a product designer and people in product, there's a kind of romantic view about product, right? Yeah. It's like, user experience and stuff like that. But it's at the end of the day, it's just like the real hard facts. It's just about it's about being able to grow a business and keep the lights on and be sustainable. So or be high growth, or whatever you're aiming for. And this is just generally about sales, which I think we spoke about when we first when we chatted originally, which is like, at the end of the day, it's all about sales, which is whether you're selling the product to hire, to talk about a new feature, it's just sales. And yeah, there's like, there can be, you can lose a bit of the romance when you talk about it like that. But I also think it's quite exciting, because if you do it in a way that excites you, it can be great. Like, it's cool to tell people about what you do. So yeah, I think like something along those lines is how I kind of think about it. From, if I was to look back on it and go, right, this is what I would change. It was like, just to realize that a lot of this is sales. A lot of this is sales driven, and you really got to be tuned into that to make it work.
So did you ever like think about, let me just move the entire company, or just go to the Bay Area and just, you've raised funding, but now maybe being in the Bay Area, you would have raised like ginormous amount of funding. Like, did you ever think about that? Because you come from like, let's be lean and efficient.
Yeah. Yeah, we did actually. Like, there was several conversations about moving to America, and we also in the early days, we got an offer from a US VC, which would have sort of, back then you had to move to get like the US funding. Like, it was part of it, and we turned it down to stay in London. And I think it was definitely a right move, because one of the reasons why is because we just thought there's so much talent in London that is not utilized, and just lurking in various corners of like digital agencies and stuff. And we thought we'd have a much better shot at being able to build an amazing team here, and that became true as well. So that was one reason, and also, you know, to set up in America is expensive, and I think that it's all relative. Like, you might raise more money, but you're going to spend more money, and so what difference does it make? Like, you're going to have the same amount of runway, but you have to up and move everything, and also have less chance of getting any talent. So because of that, it was like, it's not worth it. And you know, now that everything's remote, it doesn't really matter where you are. So
I love that.
Kind of all worked out.
Love your take on it. And then something I'm kind of curious about is, as a CEO now, do you ever feel like, oh, you know what, I should just build like a massive like Twitter following, just like, you know, like share insights and like, I know some CEOs do that. So I'm just kind of wondering, like, how do you like look at that social media? So like, do you think about like focusing more on just the product, and there, do you think about like, oh, I should have a personality, and then that would attract, you know, people? And I don't know.
No, I mean, I do. I don't get me wrong. I like Twitter. It is fun. I follow a lot of people who are just interested in, and like, I like getting information that way. And every now and then I do post something, but it's, you know, admittedly, I use it for promotional purposes mostly, because you know, there's a lot of stuff that an experience I could talk about, but I just know I don't know. I don't feel like it's hard to get the urge to do it. I don't know why. I think it's probably because I just like, I'm not sure. I don't think anyone will care, but also it's just the use of my time. I just don't have. I just to sit there and draft that stuff. I just don't know at the moment. I just don't feel like it's a good use of the time to spend, like, to build a personal brand now. To promote what the amazing team I work with do. Yes, I would 100% do that, but I'm not going to do that by doing, like, you know, some nonsense in a thread that you know, it tries to be a bit clickbait. I will hardcore promote the work the team does, because they do amazing things, and you know, the world should know about it. But for myself, I couldn't give a shit. Like, I just you know, hopefully the work does the talking, you know, like, you know, I hope the things that the team produce, and I get excited about that. I do, to be fair, like, I think one thing I do really enjoy doing is giving props to people who do cool shit that I happen to come across. Like, I really want to be supportive where I can, like, support the designers, the developers, the founders, whoever doing cool stuff, like, where I can. Like, if I see their stuff, I try it out. I love to comment it. I do try out a lot of things. So that I do like doing, but in terms of, like, you know, just building a personal brand, it's not quite for me.
I think this is all tying back to, you're very in tune with what do you like doing and your strengths, and doubling down on that, and then being very active about, or mindful of, these are the things I don't like, and if they're important, maybe I can partner with someone or get someone to do it that are more passionate about it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's probably the same for most startups that go past the point of just a few people, right? I think as you start to scale out, I think, who said it to me? Probably one of our investors that said you should be looking to give away 5% of your role every quarter. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. And then you start hiring people that take a chunk of your time out, and eventually you're hopefully left with more free time to think about the future for the business, because that isn't something that just comes to you, you know, in the shower. You need to really think about it. And I spend, to do that, like, you have to, I know for me personally, I have to immerse myself in a lot of stuff to be able to think about where things are going. And, you know, I do a lot of reading, do a lot of, like, exploration, and that takes time, and you need time to do that. And if you're being pulled into meetings, or you're doing work that is probably best done by other people who are really good at it, then it's just, you're not going to get there.
And when you say reading, is it like reading books? Is it like reading blogs? Is it like just seeing what the latest trends are, where the market is going?
All of it, like, all of that. I think any data point is really valuable, and I think I try to get through as much as I can through, you know, picking up stuff and seeing it, and speaking to customers is really helpful as well. Spend a lot of time doing that, and that's where I think you get the real world stuff too. So if you can couple, like, if you can tie in some of the things that you're sort of reading and hearing about, and then speaking to people and go, actually, is this something is this a problem you're facing? Is this, how do you feel about this? And you kind of get that validation of it. You're like, right, okay, well, I've heard this 5 or 6 times now. Let's explore this a bit further, and then you flesh it out, and then you take it from there. So yeah, I think it's just my own process. I know everyone's a bit different in that, but I find it really helpful to carve out that time to do that. And then, that's how things like Ballpark come about, right? It's like you hear, you kind of got this inkling that something could be worth doing. You start off by reading about it, and speaking to users, then looking at some data, then creating a presentation, showing it to people, and then eventually it becomes a product, or it can become a product like it did, or a feature, or whatever, or a strategy. So that's how it is. And then, alongside that, the thing that you have to do is, like, you can't just like go, okay, this is what we're doing today. You can't just tell people that this is just a new thing to build. You actually have to tell the whole background of how you even got there, right? You have to go step by step, go through, okay, this is how it started. This is the idea, this is validation, this is people we talk to, and take people on that journey with you. Like, if you're excited about something, you should be able to get other people excited about it as well. And I think that's part of this. That's part of the role. You want to be able to go into work to, hopefully, with someone that you believe in what their vision is, and you want to come along for the ride and build some cool stuff to get there. And the best way to do that is by explaining people what's in your head and getting them excited about it, right? I think if people don't know, then they're not going to get an opportunity to want to come along.
What's mind blowing, as I just listen to what you just said or think about it, is that quote you said, like, every quarter you want to give away, like, I think 5% of your role. And it's like, while you have your whole team that's working on the execution piece of it, like figuring out the day-to-day stuff, how do we get that vision? You need to have time to figure out, like, in which direction this ship is heading. And if you are involved in the day-to-day stuff, the every small details, I mean, there's nobody to really look where the ship is going or course correct it.
Exactly, and no one else is going to do it for you. So you have to be the one that comes up with the goal, right? Like, you're not going to be able to palm it off. You're not going to be able to. You shouldn't expect someone else in your team to come forward and go, "Hey, boss, like, this is the future of X." It's like, if that does happen, great. But I mean, generally, you should be the first person to pick that up and already know about it. So, the people that work for you are going to want to know why you're doing something and where it's going, because they could work somewhere else, right? They could work on anything else. If they're super talented, like the folks we have at Marvel. So, what is the reason for them to come in every day and do and work on these projects? And hopefully, it's to be along a journey that gets them to a really great sort of
And
mission.
then you've been working on this Marvel project idea, now a company, for so many years. And I mean, you could be a superhuman, but I'm a human. And dude, like, after a while, like, you get tired of working on the same topic. Like, you want to explore some other thing. You want to explore some side projects, or how do you manage that? How do you stay still, like, motivated on the same problem space for so many years at a time?
Well, I think the thing that makes it achievable with Marvel and Ballpark is the space has changed so dramatically, so quickly, in a small space of time, right? So it's nowhere close to where we even started. Like, so, maybe in some other spaces that isn't the case. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but let's say you were building,
yes,
a to-do list app, right? Not to say that they're bad, but I mean, there's very little ways that's going to evolve dramatically over the course of 5 years, right? Maybe it goes cross device. Maybe you put WebRTC in its real time, but generally speaking, to-do lists. But with design, like, we've gone from Photoshop, which was great at the time, but when Sketch came out, it was like, oh wow, like, this is how it should be. And then Figma comes out, and the jumps that you've seen from Photoshop to Sketch to Figma are massive. They're huge, technological jumps, user experience jumps, everything. Like, everything has happened, big evolution. And I don't know any other space where it's been that dramatic, like in SaaS. Like you kind of maybe in analytics or a few others that you've kind of seen that, but generally speaking, like it's something to learn every 6 months. And because it's so rapidly changing, you have to evolve as well, and you get to explore new tech. And a lot of the team get to play around with all this new tech as well. So now they're playing with, we've just integrated real-time collaboration into Ballpark, and all sorts of really great tech, and that again keeps it interesting, because I think the three things that you want to be able to give to people, and I got this from a video from I can't remember the chap's name, I have to remember it, but basically he says that there are three ways to get people to do really good creative work: mastery, purpose,
Autonomy?
and what was the other one?
Oh, the Cal Newport. Oh, yeah.
Autonomy. That was it. So yeah, so that like I think the combination of those three things are just really powerful. So here's some new technology. Get really good at it. So get mastery. Here's where we're going, because it's a super relevant mission and vision for the business. So that's purpose, and then we trust you to go and do it because you're super talented and given the autonomy. And I think like the combination of those things, if you get that right, you can bring in talented people and just be able to get them interested in staying along for a longer journey as well. Marvel has like tenure, like the tenure of employees is on average is really high. It's like above, I think it's above 4 years now. So majority of people like in Marvel, they're in their sort of 4th or 5th year. Some people are in their 6th year, and that's really difficult to achieve in tech. And I'm really grateful for it, because we hire amazing people. I love working with them. I'm privileged to be able to work with them for so long, and have to be able to share sort of them evolving and seeing them go from sort of either junior positions into sort of senior positions, and learn new skills and take more responsibility. It's amazing. So I think that's partly because of those three things that we're able to provide. But also working environment is super important, like culture. I think you have to have a mix of both. You can't just have this like great culture, but the work side doesn't line up. I think you have to have a mixture of being able to build like a business around really nice people who are just nice. Like everyone's really a really great person to be around, and then alongside that, provide them the opportunity to do great work.
One last question as we wrap up. So let's say your focus as a CEO on Marvel and Ballpark, and then let's say suddenly you become very interested in crypto. Maybe you're curious about it, but it has nothing to do with, like for example, Marvel or Ballpark at the moment. And you're like, what? This is very fascinating to me. Could be also very lucrative for you personally. Maybe you have folks that you can reach out to, or maybe you're like, what? I'm going to start angel investing because I've got like brand name, people know me, and that could be interesting and also very lucrative for me personally, but maybe it not move the needle on what I'm doing as a CEO. So how do you solve this dilemma? Like, do you still like go and explore that itch and like do it, or do you balance it? How do you make sure like you're not losing sight of what your role as CEO is and not getting too much into the side stuff?
Well, I think it depends on what you're getting into. Like if I'm starting something new on the side, I think it's a big time sink, right? And that you have to weigh up whether that's worth doing versus focus on the business. Then the crypto stuff and everything else and angel investing, I think those are things to do outside of work, like when the weekends or something you want to mess around or like angel invest and stuff, you should do that. And generally speaking, those things don't take up the time, like angel investing or crypto. That wouldn't take up a lot of time. Like, but to start something else on the side, I think probably would. And people do it all the time. It depends on where you are. Like maybe you've given away so much of your role, right? You've just got loads of free headspace, and maybe that side project is because you want to bring some of that learning into the business. Maybe you want to flex on some new tech and try something new. I think when you see especially people who are sort of engineers as sort of co-founders and stuff, you do always see like they build some stuff on the side, and you're like, oh wow, it's because they're just super passionate about and curious about trying new things. And if your stack is like React, and there's some new thing that comes out, then you're not going to be able to play around with it really at work. So you're going to have to find somewhere to, even if you're in a co-founder position. So I would say it depends on where you are in your journey. If you're further along and you've got a huge team covering all bases, and you're just like want to play around, like you can do whatever you want. But if you're in the process of like shipping like your first product, then maybe a side project isn't the best thing to introduce. But for us, like several years in, I think there's, because of Ballpark and some other things we've built recently, we're touching on things that I would probably want to do in my spare time anyway, like real time and some other really cool stuff that I can't talk about. But I mean, generally speaking, there's like some there's, if you're fortunate enough, you can introduce a lot of these things into your own product. I know that isn't always the case; it doesn't allow. But I just think like it just depends on where you're at. Like if you've got the time, maybe you want to do it every weekend, and that's your downtime, and that's how you stay fresh and energized and relevant. And for other people, maybe it's a distraction or it's an energy sink. So it depends on where you're at. But for me personally, I haven't done any of those things because I'm keen to keep exploring all that new stuff through the business and through Ballpark and what Marvel puts out. So I'm not run into that, but I've totally seen it happen. And yeah, most of the time when I see it happen, the businesses are at a much more mature stage where you can just like float around.
How can people or listeners or designers get in touch with you?
So I am on Twitter, and you could DM me if you wanted to. So my on Twitter it's Mutlu82, Mutlu 82. On if you want to email me, you can. It's MURAT at marvelapp.com, where I will try to respond. I currently have several hundred unreads, so I'm trying to get through those. So if you don't mind waiting, you can email me. DM's a lot better. It's a lot quicker. I can do that sort of on the move somewhere. So but yeah, Joe, like any questions or anything that anyone has, I'm more than happy to answer and help with.
Thank you so much, Murat, for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom.
No problem. Thank you for having me.